Hey, Miss Ashlee. It's so good to see you. I had so much fun at our picnic yesterday.
Me too.
Did you happen to think about pollinators at all after we talked?
Think about it. I couldn't even sleep last night because I just wanted to research and learn as much as I could about pollinators because you said that's a way that I can help them.
That's so awesome. That totally is a way you can help them.
Do you want to learn some cool facts that I learned?
I really do.
Do you want to learn some cool facts that I learned? Yeah, they do. Okay, the first thing I learned is that there are over 4,000 species of bees just in the United States.
That's amazing.
I'm usually just like, oh, there's a bee, but actually there's different kinds of bees.
Wow.
And the one bee that I always think about, especially with pollinators, is honeybees. And I've got something that's going to blow your mind. Honeybees aren't even from North America. They're from Europe. And speaking of honeybees and bumblebees are really the only bees that live in hives. And when we think about bees, we usually picture a big hive. But most bees are solitary, like mason bees and leafcutters, which are some pollinators that we find here in Idaho. And then I started thinking about, you kept using words like nectar and pollen during our picnic yesterday. And I was like, why do they even need nectar and pollen? Well, the bees are attracted to the flowers because the nectar provides carbohydrates or sugars, which are things that we really like them, and we need them too. And the pollen is kind of like a source of protein. And the last thing I learned, which kind of isn't a cool fact, it's kind of sad, is our pollinators, not just bees, but pollinators are declining in their numbers. Bees especially. Aww. Do you know why?
I don't.
Well, habitat loss is one of them. Things like changes in weather and climate. And then there's some environmental things and some things that humans are doing, like pesticides, which aren't good for some of our native pollinating insects. Now, I have one more thing I want to talk to you about. Have you ever heard of a bee house?
I don't think so.
Ooh, let me show you.
All right.
Bree, this is the bee house.
Oh.
Yeah, I did a lot of research before I bought this, and all that research told me a lot of great things about bee houses, but also told me a lot of mistakes that people make when they get these. Oh. Would you mind holding it while I tell everyone and you about bee houses?
Not at all.
So, this bee house is one that I just bought, and I decided that I wanted to put it together. And speaking of putting it together, Miss Bree, can you show them the bottom of the bee house?
Oh, yeah.
Because this is the most important thing. If you look, you'll notice that there's little screws and that there's different levels of this bee house. So one of the most important things about bee houses or bee hotels is you need to be able to clean it. So the one that I bought, I made sure that I can take it apart so every year I can go through and clean it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and the reason why you want to clean it is maybe disease, which if one bee has it, they could spread it to others, or parasites might be living in there, and you just need to keep an eye on your bee population.
Oh.
Another reason why I picked this bee house is you'll notice there's a little overhang here, almost like the porch on your house. And this overhang is going to help rain and moisture. It's going to help the house not get those things in there. You'll notice that these holes are about the size of my finger. You're going to want to research what kind of pollinator or what kind of bee do you want to come to your pollinator garden, because you want the holes to be about the size of the critter you're trying to get to come to the pollinator garden.
Awesome.
If it's too big, just like with the back, they'll spend a lot of time and energy making mud and other things to go in there to make it the right size. You don't want to get a gigantic, huge insect hotel because, one, a lot of our bees here aren't going to want to live in big, huge communities. Also, you could be making it possible for non-native species and just a whole different types of insects to live in one area, which might not be very healthy for your bee population.
Yeah.
And lastly, I know we always think of bees as the things that are stinging us, which, a secret, bees don't even want to sting you. They don't. But just because they have stingers doesn't mean they don't have predators of their own. Mostly birds. So if you notice that your bee house has just become an easy drive-through bird buffet for them, you can put like a fence around it so that the bees can still go in, but the birds can't eat them.
Yeah, we want to keep our bee friends safe, so that makes total sense, Miss Ashlee.
What do you think? Is this the only thing I can maybe do, is just a bee house?
Well, actually, there are a lot of things that you can do. So this is something that maybe you'd buy at a store or make for yourself. But there's also, bees love flowers and other plants. So I would love to talk to you about how you can make your yard into a garden specifically for pollinators.
Whoa, can I put my bee house in it?
Yeah, absolutely you can.
Oh, I'm so ready to learn.
Awesome. So, Miss Ashlee, we're going to talk about how to make a pollinator garden in your backyard. So, bees specifically love flowers. You just taught us that. They need flowers to eat and survive, right? And so, not only do they need food, like all living things, bees also need shelter and water. So we want to make sure our pollinator garden has all three things. Okay. So, food, flowers. So you want to have lots of flowers in your garden. But it is important to make sure that you have flowers that are going to be blooming all throughout the spring, summer, and fall.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I also kept seeing the word native flowers.
Oh, yes,
gardens.
exactly. So
I don't know what that means.
So a native flower or plant is something that is from the area. So there might be some flowers and plants that are from, I don't know, Connecticut, but those aren't native to Idaho. That's a good point. So our native bees are going to want native flowers. So that's something to keep in mind.
Got it.
So flowers that bloom all year long, native flowers. It's also important to have flowers or plants that are of different heights, because that creates little places for the bees to hide. And
bees need to hide?
Yes, they need shelter. They want to hide from things like predators. Right? Yeah. Let's see. What else do we need?
Water.
Right. Food, shelter, and water.
Bees don't need water. They're too tiny.
No, every living thing needs water, Miss Ashlee.
Oh, okay. Tell me more.
So you want to make sure there's some water source in or near your garden. So if your neighbor has a pond, awesome. If not, you can just put a little dish of water in your garden. Make sure it's shallow so that our bee friends don't drown. They need to be able to land and drink, but definitely make sure there's water for our bee friends.
This game kind of represents how bees communicate to each other. Have you ever heard of the waggle dance?
I don't think so.
Well, what bees do is they go to their flower and they want to come back and tell other bees where to find great nectar. So when they get there, they do this little whoop, whoop dance that communicates directions and how to get to this flower. How this game works is I'm going to hide an object, which I'm going to do the bee house because it's in my hand.
Perfect.
You're going to close your eyes.
Okay.
And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to do a dance and tell you some ways to go and find the bee house. So for example, maybe I put it behind that tree. She's not going to know because her eyes are closed. And I'm going to count, all right, 5 steps this way, 15 steps this way. She can do a twirl. And then I'll come back and tell her, all right, you need to do 5 steps, 15 steps. And I'm going to repeat back what she needs to do. She's going to see if she can find the object following my dance. Are you ready?
I love dancing.
All right, close your eyes. Your challenge with today's video is to grab a buddy or a couple and go outside. Find an object like the bee box or maybe something that you're not going to use to make a garden thing later. And I want you to hide it and use a waggle dance and directions to show people how to find it, just like bees do.
Bye, guys.
See ya.